Paris is the capital and the most populous city of France. Since the 17th century, Paris has been one of the world's major centers of finance, diplomacy, commerce, fashion, science, and arts. The oldest traces of human occupation in France, discovered in 2008, are human bones and evidence of an encampment of hunter gatherings dating from about 8000 BC during the Mesolithic period. Between 250 and 225 BC, the Parisi settled on the banks of the Seine, built bridges and a fort, minted coins, and began to trade with other river settlements in Europe. In 52 BC, a Roman army defeated the Parisi and established a Gallo-Roman garrison town. The town was Christianized in the 3rd century AD, and after the collapse of the Roman Empire, it was occupied by the King of Franks, who made it the capital in 508. Paris Point Zero. Just outside the Notre Dame de Paris is a small bronze disc embedded in the stone. The marker was set in 1924 and has been used as a precise measurement point to calculate distances from Paris to other places. It was briefly removed in 1966 during the excavation of the crypt under the Notre Dame Square and replaced in 1972. Originally, in the Middle Ages, in front of the portal of the bishops and then of the archbishops, there stood a post called the Ladder of Justice, at the foot of which the condemned knelt to make amends, bareheaded and barefoot. Holding a large yellow wax candle in their hands, they wore on their chests and back a double placard indicating the nature of their crime, or a noose around their neck if they were condemned to death. The criminals were then exposed to this gallows, acting as a pillory. The ladder was replaced in 1768 by a yoke, which is adopted as the 0 point by letters patent from Louis XV. This point was materialized for the first time by a terminal by royal letter. The materialization of this point in its current form was discussed for 12 years by the Paris City Council between 1912 to 1924. The coat of arms of the city of Paris shows a silver sailing ship on waves of the sea in a red field, with a chief showing a royal emblem of gold on blue, fleur-de-lis. Originally introduced in the 14th century, its current form dates to 1853. The city motto is "She is tossed but does not sink." The traditional colors of the city of Paris are red and blue. The Martians de Leu were a corporation or a guild established by royal privilege in 1170 with the right for commercial navigation on the Seine between Paris and Mantes. Their seal showed a riverboat. By the mid-14th century, the members of the guild became the most influential faction in the city, and their emblem, now represented as a sailing vessel bearing the royal fleur-de-lis as its emblem, came to be used as a city's coat of arms. The first recorded use of the coat of arms dates to 1358. The city colors of red and blue also date to 1358. But the French Revolution abolished the nobility by the decree of 20th June 1790. It simultaneously disallowed all emblems or coat of arms. The municipality of Paris quickly compiled and abolished its own arms in November of that same year. It was not until the First French Empire that new cities were officially allowed to have arms. For Paris, this resulted in the letters patent granted to the city of Paris by Napoleon. In the letters patent of Louis XVII in 1817, the coat of arms of Paris was restored in its traditional form, except for the chief, where the fleur-de-lis was replaced by 3 bees used by Napoleon. The July monarchy reintroduced the old coat of arms. Under the French Second Republic, the fleur-de-lis was replaced by the stars. The Mobilier National is a French national service agency under the supervision of the French Ministry of Culture. It administers the Gobelins Manufactory and the Beauvais Manufactory. The Mobilier National continues to administer state furniture but has also expanded from its historical role of conserving furniture to curating a modern collection. Considered France's national attic, the Mobilier National is crammed with treasures from Napoleon, Marie Antoinette, and Louis XVI. Created in 1667 by French Minister of Finance Jean-Baptiste Colbert, it was a royal storehouse as he transformed the Gobelins tapestry factory. It is now responsible for furnishing government ministries and embassies with everything from doorstops to doorknobs. The Fountain of Four Seasons is a monumental 18th century public fountain. It was executed by the royal sculptor of King Louis XV and opened in 1745. The fountain is huge and richly decorated, but it only had two water spouts, and its grand scale on the narrow street, together with the lack of water, irritated the Voltaire and other figures of the French Enlightenment. The fountain was the largest and most ornate of the 30 fountains built in Paris in the 18th century to provide drinking water to the city's residents. The fountain had a double purpose: to provide water to the Parisians and to advertise the benevolence of King Louis XV to the people of Paris. The king's principal minister and political counselor personally wrote the inscription, which was placed on the facade of the fountain in Latin, in gold letters engraved in black marble. It said, "Whereas Louis XV, the object of love of his people, an excellent father, the support of public tranquility, after having recovered without the flow of blood the frontiers of Kingdom of France, and since peace has been happily restored between the Germans and the Russians and the subjects of the Ottoman Empire, ruling in a manner both glorious and peaceful, the Private des Marchands and the town councillors have devoted this fountain to the service of the citizens and to the beautification of the city in a course of the year 1739. After the fountain was built, there were many calls for it to be moved to a large square where it would be more visible and proportional to its surroundings. But given the many reconstructions of Paris squares in the 19th and the 20th century, it probably survived intact only because of its obscure location. Pablo Picasso occupied his studio in Paris from the end of 1936 until 1955. The studio was the scene of the Guernica's creation and the place where Dora Maar photographed its creative progress as well as the pictures and paintings related to it. After the Second World War, Picasso would spend majority of his time in the south of France, only using his studio in the French capital. It was also the same building and studio in which Honoré de Balzac placed the main character in his novel, The Unknown Masterpiece, thus creating a special aura around the space and work of Picasso and his pursuit of idea of beauty. In the winter of 1936, when Picasso set up his new studio, he found resemblances to his first house studio in Paris. Following the Republic government's commission for Spanish Pavilion at the Paris's World Fair in 1937, the studio would become the scene of Guernica's conception and creation. In the weeks, the artist worked on great canvas. He received visits from friends, politicians, of which there remains a photographic record of André Berton's and Jacqueline Lamba's visits. After a stay in Royan in 1939, Picasso remained in the French capital during the Second World War and the German occupation of the city. The records bear witness to a large number of visitors he received in his studio during that period. Artists, reporters, military officers, and even the German ambassador in Paris. Picasso worked unceasingly in his studio paintings and sculptures produced over that stretch of time, alongside previous works and work by other artists. After years of attempted arrangements and controversy, plans were submitted to turn the building into a hotel, and with the participation of his daughter Maya, the studio is currently used for artistic purposes and research related to the artist.